This video contains adult situations and language. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. I just moved to a new apartment. I'm feeling tense living alone anyway, and this is what I just saw this evening. And it's the creepiest thing I've maybe ever seen. I looked out of the balcony while speaking with my mom on the phone and saw maybe 70 meters away this woman. She was wearing only a long red flowing dress, even when it's super cold outside, taking these super long, slow steps while she was crossing the street. Now I instantly felt like something was off, and I lost my words while talking to my phone. I've never seen anyone walk that slow. It's just that it could have been normal, but there was something so creepy about the way she walked. I had to watch her until she disappeared behind the hill. I think she wasn't human, or maybe she was a witch. Let's never meet again. Woman walking super slow in a red long dress. This happened yesterday, and I'm still just as confused and grossed out. So I was waiting on the back street to my house for my partner, next to this footpath that people usually take for walks every afternoon. It's early afternoon, and I'm just standing under a small tree for shade in the clearing, and this older couple, maybe in their mid-50s, are walking past. We exchange glances, as you do, and they seem normal enough, but the husband double takes on me a couple of times, but it didn't seem weird or anything. He suddenly breaks off from her and starts walking off the path straight towards me, which is weird because all there is around me is short bushes and trees. I move out of the way a little, and he takes another long, dead look at me before stopping right next to me to pull his junk out and begins urinating in the bushes right next to me. I start walking straight to the other side of the path and look back, and I catch him staring right at me the whole time. I see him stay there out of the corner of my eye for a good minute or two, and then turns to look at me again and walks off. I know it sounds a little silly being freaked out by that, but the fact that he went straight to where I stood and stared at me the entire time, even when I walked away, was unnerving and repulsive. A few months ago, I was at my grandfather's funeral. I was sitting and looking at the slideshow of his pictures when my mother's cousin came and talked to me. We went to take a walk outside, and he started asking personal questions about me and told me he was attracted to me when he saw me for the first time. Later, he asked about my genitals. I'm a trans girl in boy mode at the time. I got some rather weird vibes from him as we talked. He asked me if I was in a relationship, and I said I was. His answer was, "Oh, okay then. I'll restrain myself." He also talked about how he's into intergenerational relationships. It was highly creepy, considering that I'm 15 and he's around 45. He gave me a hug and his hand started to go below the belt, so I pulled away. While getting back to the funeral home, he asked if he can hug me again, and I declined. So yeah, I never want to meet him again. I'm 22 now, but when all this happened was when I was 16. At the time, I lived in Staten Island, New York. Just a little background. I'm a female, and at the time I was 120 pounds soaking wet, with a height of 5'6". I thought I was invincible. I mean, stuff like this would never happen to me, so I thought. It was March 17th of 2013, around 10:30 p.m. I was leaving my boyfriend's house. He walked me to the local bus stop, as he always did. We joked and laughed while we waited for my bus to show up. At the time, I didn't really think much of it, but because of the time of day, there weren't really cars on the street. I see a black SUV pull across the road. My bus came and I said goodbye to my boyfriend and proceeded to walk on. For some reason, I couldn't find my change. That made me sit on the seat next to the bus driver. It was just him and I. He turned to me once we hit a red light. He asked me, "What are you doing out this late?" It was random and a little creepy, but I replied with my boyfriend. When we started a small talk and it didn't seem so creepy anymore, he told me that it wasn't safe and that I should be more careful. I nodded, but as I said before, I was a hotshot 16-year-old who was invincible. As my stop approached, I decided I was going to get off on another one and to transfer buses so I can get closer to my house. I looked at my phone and the time read somewhere around 11:30 p.m. and my phone was on 5%. Great, I thought to myself. I got off the next stop and said goodbye to the driver. He told me to stay safe, so I nodded again. As I was walking to the stop to hop on another bus, I checked to see the time again, but my phone had died. The schedule said 11:40, so I thought, only 10 minutes from when I last looked at the time, so it should be here any minute. I waited for what seemed about 10 minutes. Then a black SUV pulls in front of the stop. I ignore it, thinking nothing of it. To my surprise, this man rolls down his window. He was a medium build, dark shirt, looking a mixture between Spanish and Asian. He calls out and asks me, "Excuse me, hey, what time is the bus supposed to be here?" I replied thinking he was waiting for someone. "It shouldn't be long." He then asks me how long I was waiting. At this point, I started to get creeped out, but I answered that I wasn't waiting too long. He then proceeded to try to talk to me. I was trying to be polite, but pretended like I was on the phone, even though my screen was pitch black. It was dark out, so the only lights were the distant street lights. There was also 2 big trees covering the bus stop, so if this guy tried anything, no one would see me. I clenched my phone, feeling uncomfortable. He then said he didn't know the area, that he was new. He was in the army, and he was stationed nearby. He then asked where the beach was, so I told him. "It's just down this street." I looked at him, seeing his face very clear. His eyes were not like any normal human being. It's as if they were looking right through me, staring at me, like as if he had an agenda. Then he asked me, "Do you mind if you show me? Come in the car and show me around the area?" Dude, I'm 16. I may have been naive, but I'm not an idiot. I knew if I got in that car, I wouldn't be getting out of it. I wasn't trying to show him that I was getting nervous, so I politely declined looking down the street for my bus. He begged and pleaded, and I told him no once again. Then he said something to me that I will never forget. "Please, it won't take long." My blood started to run cold. My stomach was sick. I felt like I was going to throw up. But I kept my cool and thankfully seen my bus down the road, and I had a feeling of relief and told him no, thinking that would be the end of it. He then told me he'd drive me home right afterwards. This guy would not give up. I finally said, "No, leave me alone." And with all the strength and courage in me, then I heard him. As my bus pulled up, as if the comment about him not taking long wasn't enough, he said, and I quote, "Fine, I'll just follow you and see where you live." My heart started to beat fast. My hands broke out in a cold sweat. My body started to tremble with fear. I got on the bus, and I don't know why I didn't tell the bus driver. I think I was in a state of shock. I was hoping he didn't really mean that comment, that he was going to drive off at a failed attempt to kidnap a 16-year-old girl. But when I sat down, I looked out of the window and seen he was following the bus. I was about to cry. When it was my stop, I ran like hell. I reached the front door to my building, and it was usually unlocked, but tonight, of all nights, it was locked, top and bottom. I rang the doorbell, frantically looking for my keys. Then I heard a car pull up in front of my house. Without turning around, I froze in fear. Just like the movies, I frantically dropped the keys as I was trying to put them in the door. Finally, I unlocked the door, and before turning the handle, I hear the car door close. I quickly run inside and lock the door behind me. I run inside my apartment. Frantically, I explained to my mother and older brother what happened. My brother ran outside and looked up and down the street. I was shaking. My heart was pounding. I was crying. I didn't know what to do. I called the police. They came and searched the area and asked me if I got a tag number. I told them it was too dark, but I did see a huge sticker of some sort on the back window of a bird. It didn't dawn on me until after they left that had been the same car that was across the street when I was with my boyfriend an hour prior. They told me they checked the army base nearby and around the area, but had not seen any car fitting the description. All I could think about was what that bus driver's advice was to stay safe. What a coincidence. Years went by. I didn't think about it that much after that. Me and my boyfriend at the time broke up, and months later, I saw the bus driver again and told him what had happened. One day, I was scrolling through Facebook and see a picture my friend posted about her story of this man following her from work for 3 days. It was a picture of the same guy trying to abduct me 5 years prior. My heart felt like it was in my throat. Looking at the post, I had seen that multiple women have come forward, saying similar stories like mine. One called the local news station. I ended up finding out that he almost kidnapped a 13-year-old girl and ended up getting her in his car. She looked in his back seat and seen what she thought was chloroform, duct tape, and a rope. She saw gloves too. She jumped out of the window. He also got physical with another woman who was pregnant, trying to shove her in his car. She saw the same items that the 13-year-old had seen. He got ballsy and started trying to take these women in broad daylight. The news found out his name. They posted him all over his face and found out that he had a wife and 2 daughters that were around 3 and 5. They interviewed his neighbors. To my surprise, they defended him, saying that all these women were lying. Don't you think that if there are more than 5 accounts, you should rethink who you think and know? Anyway, to this day, I have no idea if he was arrested. But the last I heard, he was on the run. I hope they caught him. This way, no other women can ever go through the fear of that monster ever again. I live in Pennsylvania now, and go to Staten Island probably once a month to see friends and remaining family who still live there. But to the creep named Leo, who stalked my bus and followed me home, let's not meet again. When I was around 8 years old, we moved into a new house. It wasn't old, but it wasn't a fairly new built house either, maybe built around the 60s. Everyone got their own room, and this was the first time I was on my own. I thought I was a big shot. A little backstory on myself. I'd like to call myself somewhat of a sensitive. Ever since I was a child, I could always feel the sense of something or someone around when no one else could. Fast forward to when I was 9. It was the first year in the house. I could feel the presence of something in there, but I never really thought anything of it, considering it wasn't too negative. There were 3 rooms that I didn't really like being in because the energy felt somewhat dark. The basement, the bathroom, and the attic. I didn't mind being in the basement when I had friends over, but when I was alone, I couldn't be in there for more than 5 minutes without getting the feeling like I was being watched. In the bathroom was a cabinet that was very deep. You could literally fit 2 grown men in there. I never understood why it was so big, but didn't feel right, and I would often feel drawn to just look inside and stare for a few minutes. I would get a very uneasy feeling. The attic, on the other hand, was a different story. I never, ever opened it. I kept the door shut at all times. Something was up there, and it didn't want company. One night, I was laying in bed. It was around 2:45 a.m. when I heard footsteps in the hallway. I assumed it was just one of my brothers coming home from a night out with friends. My bedroom door was open, so I looked to see if anyone was walking around. I stared for what seemed like 10 minutes, and no one went by. I got scared, so I decided to wait it out. As my eyes adjusted to the dark, I thought I seen a human-like shape in the corner of my bedroom. I thought maybe it was just my eyes playing tricks on me, so I just tried to turn over and go to sleep. But I felt like I was being watched. Now, in a 9-year-old's mind, it's the boogeyman. So I quick hopped out of my bed and tried to run into my mom's room. Her room was only 2 doors down from mine. In order to walk out of my room, you have to pass a wall that was somewhat slanted. In order to do this, you have to walk sideways. As I did this, I felt 2 hands press down on my shoulders. I froze in fear. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I was a prisoner to my own body. Then, all of a sudden, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. In my ear, clear as day, I heard heavy breathing. It didn't sound human. My eyes widened, and then I felt pressure lift off of me. I could move again. I ran so fast down the small hallway into my mother's bed. That whole night, I kept hearing someone walk back and forth in the hallway, but I refused to look through the doorway. When I tell you I didn't sleep that night, I mean I didn't sleep that week. The next morning, I walked into the hallway and just so happened to look up. The door to the attic was open. I asked my mom, was she up in the attic? And she said no, that there was no reason that it should be open. My stomach felt like it was in my throat. I knew that whatever was in that attic was in my bedroom the night before, just watching me. I'm thankful I got up out of bed when I did, because if I didn't, I don't want to think of what was going to happen. I'm 22 now, and I can still remember that night as if it were yesterday. And I still can't sleep with the lights off. So to whoever, or whatever, grabbed my shoulders that night, let's never, and I mean never, meet again. 32 female here. This happened in my office yesterday, just for info. I work as a secretary to a minister in a certain ministry. So I was in my office when I was informed that a person wanted to meet the minister. I went to the reception to take his contact details and see if I could advise him, as the minister does not receive any person at his office unless it's a critical situation. So dude told me his name and said that he wanted a job in public service and he is here to meet the minister. I asked him whether he applied for jobs and if he was willing to work in the private sector. Dude started shouting at me, saying he will work in the public sector only, and even went to an interview, but they have not given him a reply yet. He insisted on meeting the minister. I told him that this does not happen the way he thinks it does, and he will have to be patient and wait for his turn. As soon as I said that, dude yelled at me, "How long will I have to wait?" and leapt forward to headbutt me. As a reflexive action, I put my forearm in front of my face and pushed him away. The bodyguard quickly came and took the man away, and another officer took me inside. I was under shock and trembling like a leaf. I wanted to say something to the man, but my voice came out shaking. It took me a few minutes to calm down my nerves and absorb what just happened. It is a serious offense to attack an officer on duty, but I did not press charges because I didn't want to get involved in a police case and all. Anyway, mentally disturbed dude or frustrated guy, we are never going to meet because you are herewith declared a persona non grata in my office. This is a story about my ex-boyfriend. Let's call him Jack. I met Jack when I was 13 and he was 17. I was hanging out with my friends and he came up to us because he knew a few kids hanging around. We didn't speak at first, but I remember thinking he was cute, but I was too shy to introduce myself. A day later, I get a message from my friend, we'll call him Scott, on Facebook. Scott: "Hey stranger." Me: "Huh? Stranger? How am I a stranger?" Scott: Nothing. Never mind." Me: "No, tell me." Scott: "My friend thinks you're cute." Me: "What friend? Who? Huh? Tell me." He didn't answer me, but I kind of hoped it was Jack. Fast forward to the next day. I see Jack and he's hanging with Scott. I told my friends what happened and they were all excited for me. We went to a park where we all hung out. We had a good time. Jack didn't say one word to me, so I thought maybe he wasn't the friend. Later, me and Jack were standing next to each other. My friend just yelled, "Just ask her out already." He blushed and so did I, but we just laughed. Then he asked me to be his girlfriend on the spot. Now let me just clarify. I just turned 13. I didn't know much about dating. Just the, "I love you, you're the love of my life, and we've only held hands" kind of childish relationship. Now, I had no idea at the time that Jack was 17, nor did I know the kind of person he was. If I did, I would have stayed far away. Through the course of a year, we got to know each other. I learned who the real him was. He was toxic. Jack was manipulative, abusive, and self-centered. The age difference didn't really bother me much, but it was just how he acted around me. He didn't let me hang out with my friends or my family. I went on vacation with my uncle and cousins, and he somehow got my uncle's phone number and started texting him all hours of the night, asking to see if I was okay and why I wasn't answering him. He was rude and very disrespectful towards my parents. He would also force me to have sex with him, and when he would tell me things, very nasty and disgusting things that would make you want to throw up, how he wanted to shit on him, and drink my pee. It was absolutely disgusting, and I told him I would never do that. I started to get depressed and tried to find a way out of the relationship. Now, I'm not a confrontational person, but I couldn't do this anymore. I broke up with him and blocked his phone number and didn't want anything to do with him. He called on private all hours of the day. When I was in class, he spread lies about me around school. He would follow me home. Finally, I had to get a restraining order put against him. If only it was the end. One day after school, I stayed to finish a test I had to make up. It was around 4 o'clock, so the streets weren't as busy as 2:30 when school let out. It was also winter, so it got dark earlier. I hopped on the bus around 4:15. While I got on, I got a gut feeling to sit further from a window. By 4:45, I reached my stop. Now, before I got off, I just so happened to look out of the window. And there is Jack, waiting for me. He must have been waiting there since school let out. I sat back and put my head down so he didn't see me. I took the bus about a mile down the road and got off. A mix of emotions flew through my body. I mean, at the time, I was a 14-year-old girl. I didn't know how to handle this situation, so I did the best I could. I hopped on the next bus up to my house, thinking I could make a run for it. It was 5:30 when the bus came, and my nerves were shot. I hopped on and watched as my stop approached and tried to see anyone waiting there. Thankfully, no one was there. I get off. I look up at the once lit sky. It's dark now. I quickly speed walk to my house, which was a block away. My hoodie is on my head. My hands are in my pockets, and my heart is pounding. My house was on the corner, and I could almost see it when there he was, standing by the phone pole, looking at me, smiling. I froze. My blood ran cold. I was about 10 yards away from him. He was standing directly in front of my house. I didn't know if I should run or try and cross the street, but before I made a decision, he started to run towards me. I screamed and ran. I don't know why I didn't run to my door, but before I could move even 3 feet, he had his hands on my bag and pulled me towards him. He started yelling at me. "Do you think you could leave me? I love you. You can't leave me." I didn't say anything. I just cried and told him to stop. His grip got tighter and tighter until my arms got sore. I begged him to let me go. "I'll make you miserable if you don't stay with me," Jack said, gripping into my arms. "I don't love you, Jack," I replied. I watched his eyes turn from hurt to hate. His grasp got even tighter. His eyes turned black. You'd swear he was foaming from the mouth. I yelled, but no one came. Then my survival skills came in. Me. What do you want, Jack? You can have it. Jack. I want you. Me. Okay, you can have me. I'm yours. Now, please, let go. You're hurting me. His eyes looked like they snapped back to reality, like he realized something. As he let go, told me he loved me and that he was sorry. He was still in my way. I was cornered into an alleyway. Him. I love you. You know that, right? Me. I know. Him. Don't you love me? Me. No, I don't. Before he could get a word in, I kneed him in his nuts and bit his chin. I ran for my life. When I got home, I told my mom and they called the police. He was given a warning. But because he was 17, they didn't place any real charges on him, even though I had a restraining order. He still finds me on social media and my phone numbers, even almost 10 years later. I hope he finds peace in himself, and I really do hope he never does this to someone else. So Jack, please, let's not meet again. So, I'm posting this for my boyfriend who doesn't use Reddit much. It'll be from his perspective. This may be short because he doesn't remember a whole lot since he was 7 at the time, and his parents never told him much. But I'm including the key details he does remember. So when I was 7 years old, I went to a small school in our little oil field town in Alberta. There was this guy named Daniel. I don't know if that's his real name, but when I think of him, my mind defaults to that. Well, Daniel had slept with my mom ages before I was even conceived, and somehow had in his brain that I was his child. Full-blown delusional. So Daniel decided the smart and rational thing to do was to stalk me. Hardcore. He apparently plotted out a map to my school. He knew my name. He knew how old I was. He knew what I looked like. I have no idea how he got this information. My mom never really used Facebook, and he lived in a different province. I had never met this man before. Daniel decided that one day he wanted to take it a step further. He had been ranting to his wife about me and kept telling her I was his kid and that he was going to drive from British Columbia all the way to Alberta to come kidnap me and bring me back to BC with him. He was convinced I was conceived earlier than I was, and I was his kid, and my mom made some conspiracy to hide the fact that I was his kid. He had a whole plan for how to kidnap me, down to the date he was going to do it. His wife decided to call my mom and warned her, and my mom decided to put safety measures up, like making sure I was in groups, and I had to be home by 4, etc. I was only told about all this when I was 14, and still don't know all the details. Obviously, he never went through with his plan. So Daniel, who for some reason thought I was his kid and planned to kidnap a 7-year-old me, let's not meet. Edit. Boyfriend just told me a detail he forgot. Apparently, Daniel wanted to kidnap him also to force his mom to get back together with him, despite his mom being married, and him also being married. What a creep. I hope you dudes enjoyed that video. As always, drop a like, click subscribe if you want to be notified when I have future videos with content like this. And as always, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.